Recording in progress.
Okay.
I move that we nominate Megan Turin for chairman.
Second. Third.
All right.
Very sneaky.
All in favor, say aye. Should we do this one at a
Aye.
time?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Yep.
That was a sneaky. Then I nominate Henry Chandler as vice chair.
Second. Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we're stuck with each other, Henry.
Yeah. Another
Um,
year of this.
I should have gotten in there first. Okay. Have you all had a chance to look at the minutes and did you find anything, any changes?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, now I know we have some people on Zoom. I'd like to open it up for public comment if anyone is here and wanted to say something. I'll just wait till Ben joins. Maybe he wanted to say something. Ben, are you out there? He's muted. Yeah, okay. If no one has any public comment, then we will move on to review the board appointments. And I saw the list of names.
Yeah, there's a typo on the agenda. First, obviously, it's 2024. And this is just kind of the first touch point. Well, these are the names. We'll then
Reach out to
we'll
them.
reach out to them to see if they're interested in continuing.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
There is one vacancy on the planning commission right now.
I have a name that
Um,
could be someone we could consider.
And nothing on ZBA, 2 on conservation commission, 2 on design review. Actually, 2 maybe now, not board and
Oh, forgot.
which, yeah, we've been having the.
Wait, what's that? Sorry.
It's the design review committee now, not the design review board.
The reference in the zoning bylaw changed. It's not board anymore, it's committee. And then BCRC.
Yeah.
The ones in yellow are the ones that are up. So we'll reach out to those folks. There is one, again, vacancy in PC. So if anybody has, anybody interested, there is one vacancy there. So
Okay, I can think of someone.
So is the town manager an appointed officer?
technically, yeah, some hired.
Hired.
Anybody that's not elected.
Okay.
Yes, you don't want it to manager elected.
No, don't want that.
Yeah, and we still have those pesky fence viewers.
But this is all gonna,
We should make a move on that.
the whole question of planning commission and design review,
Mhm.
that's probably a significant factor and going to be a significant factor if we consider changing the structure, right?
Mhm.
But that, I don't know when we're gonna get into that whole question.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
You can talk about it now, or you can talk about it under old business, or
Well,
at a different time, or whenever you want.
just as a, the point's been raised and I'm kind of just this got me thinking about the fact that we've had a big public discussion on it and it's sort of in limbo, right?
Yep. More or less. I think, back.
When we were at the discussion of the joint meeting, it's sort of the way we left it. My understanding was that we were going to give everyone a little time to settle in now that the regs have been passed, all of that is done. And the regulations are still brand new and the planning commission is still the most knowledgeable about them, to just kind of let things settle for a while where we contemplated it. That was what sort of my impression that we came out of that meeting with, because
Mhm.
people
Yeah,
obviously
I
lots of
I
different.
apologize for not bringing it up before, it was just sort of the old, that's unfinished business that, you know, at some point.
I think there was a
Even
discussion about trying to survey the
Individuals on the
individual
committee,
members of the
to
committee.
see what their
Mhm.
input would be
Yeah.
in terms of,
what they'd want to serve
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
What they'd be willing to do. And then also, I think everyone was thinking it's a funny time to be doing it because the planning commission had all that work. You were at that meeting on Zoom,
Yep,
right?
Yep,
That they had all this work and now all of that is done, so it may change the balance of what they're
they
doing
may have
as
the
well.
ability to do some of the projects if they want to do it.
Hmm.
Well,
So,
Right,
it's still kind of in the, obviously it's the board's decision, but it's maybe the PC members and the ZBA members
mhm,
work to do some of the informal surveying and.
mhm.
So at this point, we're hoping to hear something from them as to how they're feeling, when people are feeling
Mhm.
about.
And I also thought it just kind of seems like the wrong time, like I think.
Yeah.
We should just let things settle, particularly
Mhm.
with all the changes to the zoning regs. It just seems like to swap it out and put all brand new people who haven't been involved in them. They're just
I-
so,
I don't know about the
deep.
rest of you, but I have no idea what the right answer is on that.
Yeah.
So,
So it just seems
Yeah.
like they are more familiar with them. So I think it might
Yeah.
be a disservice to
yep,
residents when you're trying to get something passed, if you've got a whole brand new
Yeah.
people trying to read 200.
I think as
50
people submit
pages.
applications, they're gonna find things they didn't expect or
Yeah.
maybe have to interpret intent. I think that makes a lot of sense.
okay.
So if it is something, it may be something we do or discuss more in the future, but just kind of let things play out for 6 months and see where the regs take us and let everybody get used to stuff.
Yeah, I would even say a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Henry, because it's gonna take a while as projects come
Right, you
through.
don't get enough applications that they'll get used to it
Right.
too quickly.
Right.
Okay,
So that'll be on, the board appointments will be on the agenda for the next meeting,
and will those,
with some updates about,
so those, who's gonna be reaching out to the individual committee members? Will the committees themselves, the chairs of the committees?
I typically do that.
Okay.
I just kind of email each.
And then if
person.
we find there are vacancies, you can also notify them and see if they have any recommendations and if they're all.
And also let us know.
Yeah, and if anybody thinks of anyone, I've got a name, I'll run it by everyone before. I don't want to say it on public TV because they might not be interested.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have that on the agenda.
Yep.
All right, so the short-term rental ordinance that I saw that, are these the changes that Jim? had
Changes
helped
are in
with?
red.
Mhm.
In 5.2 trash waste and parking, so it's adding in. Basically, section C, parking for short-term rental. Units shall not negatively impact neighbors and traffic on nearby town roads.
Mhm.
Very, just kind of boilerplate. And then there was also the addition under A, disposal of trash should occur in a timely manner upon turning over the unit. That was an additional sentence based on the feedback from the board at the last
Right.
meeting.
Mhm.
If you move right along, we reduced down and kind of clarified some of the civil penalty info.
Mhm.
Only three offenses listed and obviously subsequent, and then the penalty and then the waiver fee for that. And then there was a
Rob,
question.
I'm still just curious about,
Go ahead.
I still don't understand what a waiver fee is, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's like a settlement fee.
It's the $50 bill you give to the cop under the.
Well, I mean, there's a penalty of $100, but then the waiver fee is, you know. If
You don't have to pay the $100.
It's the discretion of the discretion of the officer, I think, that if they, I guess if the, if there's say it's the first offense, and the owner remediates the situation very,
Okay.
very quickly,
Mhm.
you could reduce the
So it's sort of like the penalty is between 50 and $100.
kind, yeah, kind of.
And the other question here, it says municipal complaint before the judicial bureau. And I was trying to,
Figure out who that
what is
is.
the judicial bureau?
It is where all the civil, like your traffic tickets and all that stuff,
Mhm.
that's, like, if you get a speeding ticket.
So it is the court system
Yeah,
It's a
here.
court, yeah.
If you
Okay,
get a speeding ticket and contest it, it's the same entity
Okay.
that reviews.
great, okay, thanks.
And does it go to Huntington or Rutland?
For our case, Bennington.
Huntington.
Yeah.
No more Manchester.
Also right above that where we say this, a civil penalty up to $800 per day. Since our top penalty is $500, should we change that to 500 or does it not matter? Is that like
That's a good
legal
question. I think
language?
the 800 is like statute,
Statute, right?
I think, but I can.
So probably if somebody had two properties and had two different
Mhm.
penalties or something. I don't know.
Oh, no, that's each day.
Yeah, so the civil
Mm-hmm.
penalties that are being assessed is a penalty per day.
Right.
For each day that the violation
Yeah.
continues.
Okay.
For such violation.
Yeah,
So I guess they should have a violation on overcapacity and a violation on. Something else.
Yep.
yep, and
Well,
each offense is a separate offense that can be penalized separately. I'll check on that language about the $800 per day. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure there's some kind of statute, and that's
Yep.
like the max that you could.
Yep.
Well,
the joint and several
yeah, so there
liabilities.
was a
that's-
question about the individual and separate liability
Yeah.
versus joint and several,
Mhm.
and Jim changed that, and he's got his reasoning.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Mhm. Pretty much, the same thing later in that section. Everything else remains the same,
Mhm.
and that's, just based on the board's last discussion and then his review and input.
The only kind of open-ended matter is the matter of the registration form.
Right.
Which is approved by the select board, I'm assuming. When we actually put this up to vote on, will we have a form to approve at that point in time? Or do we want to leave that?
I think it's
Or
up to
later
you.
date.
It's up to you. You should have it at the same time if you want to approve it at the same time that you approve the ordinance. So it would be kind of reviewed. You could do that, or you could.
I think
create
we
it
should.
later.
Yeah, I don't know, what do you-
Well, I mean, we've got to check on the $800 a day thing anyway, just to see if we need that language in there, or we should shift it to 500, but, yeah, but I think that when we, adopt the ordinance, then we're gonna have like a 30-day period, right?
60 days.
60 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means we would have time to do the form at
Mhm.
the next meeting or the meeting after that, before it actually comes into play, but we clearly would have to have a form approved before.
That's-
Right.
When we're
When it
asking them
goes
to
into effect.
register, we have to have a form for that.
Those links or whatever I said included one that had
Yep.
a bunch of questions that could be used.
Yeah.
And I still, I don't know whether anybody took a look at. It was, and it might make no sense whatsoever to hire an outside firm, but there are those firms that do this, and it might be way too expensive in our circumstances,
Mhm.
but for people who wouldn't hurt to see if we could get a good info from them.
Yeah, we should definitely maybe print some of those out and take a look at what we want to
Mhm.
ask people. I mean, we certainly want to know all of the things that we're,
This is it.
demanding in the ordinance. We want to make sure that we're asking.
Well, we're looking for information as to just, how much is going on. I mean, we have a number. You know, how many rooms total are available in the town?
But I think this is gonna, you know, one of the reasons to you potentially use an outside service is but one of the things they do is they actually, you know, got all the different sites and try to estimate how many places in your town are already advertising,
Mhm.
you know, Airbnb and everything else. So I think we kind of, you know, we could probably, we have to appoint somebody, a short-term rental officer. Person could do that, you know, check the URL and the Airbnb and stuff like that
Yeah.
as well. But I would think that's one of the, once you put it in place, then, you know, like in Manchester, Village, they put this in place and then they were like, okay, but nobody's coming to us for, you know, to apply for their permits so you've got to know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to chase them down.
Well, I'm sure Susan can help us in that regard.
I mean, I've basically already done exactly what you said. When I contacted every owner on VRBO and another person did all the ones on Airbnb,
Yeah.
was to notify them that this is coming down the pike and, you know, so I'm actually.
If you have all that, if you
I'll
have
be your
that-
short-term rental officer.
that could
Okay,
be
so we'll wait
useful.
until.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want me to
That could be useful info.
Really? Oh,
research your software registration platforms? Is that what?
I think,
I don't think it'll be that hard. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
well, there
Why
was
not?
I think I sent a link to a site that, and I was just thinking, might as well call them and say, okay, what do you do and how much does it cost?
Yeah.
Right.
And, and if we already have the info on, you know, who's, you know, showing places around the town, we may not need any of those services. I just don't know whether, you know, with a lot of those online type things, some of them are sized so that if you're a small user, then you get a small fee.
Mhm.
Some of them have, if you're a small user, then it's way too expensive, plain and simple. You know, I don't know what this is gonna be,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, so we could.
but I think they're using it in bigger places like Killington and stuff like that,
Right.
where,
We have hundreds of.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
All right, so maybe just, if you can look into it and see like what the
Yep.
fees would be.
Forms,
Mhm.
$800 question
It
and
makes sense.
software.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe, once we have that at the next meeting, unless there's something else, I don't see, I mean, I think the ordinance right now, in my mind,
Looks
is good,
Ready to go.
so.
Section 1.1 needs a period. Other than that,
Hold on a second.
The end?
the last, yeah,
I just have a question. Is the revision in this current state that you have available for viewing?
It's not online or anything like that.
Or is it possible for me to get a copy just to see where we're at?
Yep.
Minus the couple questions. I'd love to see. I'm serious though. I would be a short-term officer. I'd be happy to help.
There's definitely a conflict of interest there.
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Like, I wasn't even dreaming of that, really. Like, I mean, I want the town to, you
Well-
know, I want us all to register too. I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
I think we'd be concerned unless you owned, 24 buildings or something like that. Then it probably would be
I didn't even think of
a
that.
concern.
I just feel like I'm already like, in the thick of it. I already,
Right.
know.
But we appreciate the offer.
You're welcome.
Okay, so why don't we wait until the next meeting? And we get the answer to that question. Sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat, so I just had to take a lozenge. And then we'll work on both the form and then adopting this with the answer to that question at the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. The V-Trans highway forms.
So we have to certify that we spend at least $300 per mile for class 1, 2, and 3 highways. And now that the town meeting is done, and the budget's approved. There's just a boilerplate form that the board signs that attests that we spend more than 300 a month.
So we all sign this.
What's the reasoning behind that? Do you know, Rob?
In order to be eligible for state highway, the federal state highway aid, you have to spend $300 per mile. Within the-
Okay, that makes
You can
sense.
imagine it's a really, really old.
It's such a bizarre statement here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
Funds raised by municipal taxes are at least
Years old.
$300 a mile.
It probably comes from, I don't even know what the year was, Barlow can tell you the year.
It just does, it's really illogical.
Yeah, exactly.
That is strange.
And about $1 million a year and you've got 56 miles of road.
Just eke in there,
I
right?
can do the math.
Okay, and the Raptor Lane Housing Study Agreement.
Yep, so we've been waiting on this for a while, but now it's before us. The Raptor Lane Committee, one of the things that they've, sought out is to, do a capacity or feasibility review for, the Raptor Lane area, and the map on the walls kind of sideways, but the orange areas that are shown on the map, as part of the VHB, environmental review, the orange areas were kind of denoted as being developable or, able to be developed. So now the next step that we're taking is to hire somebody to look at it. Well, okay, well, what does that mean? And how many units? And so they'll get into soil testing and, placement and design and kind of reading our own zoning regs and coming up with a way to, understand how many, what the capacity is.
Mhm.
And that's essentially what this proposal sets out to do.
Now, they mentioned the whole 308 acres, but they aren't really focusing on. Are they looking at the whole 308?
They're gonna particularly look at the orange areas, which it kind of stretches out over most of the 300 acres.
Okay.
But the orange areas altogether is about 100 acres. And it's not contiguous, as you can see.
Yeah.
So those will be the focus areas. They're not gonna be looking at areas where it's not suitable.
But you could also, potentially you could get.
But they're gonna have to.
More density in some places
Yes,
because you're not
and
using others.
that's part of what they're gonna decipher is like what our rules say and what the best options are. Say, I think you look at the lower bottom left-hand part of the map, that's the area just to the left of where the town office is gonna go. It's flat. There's 2 roads in there.
Yep.
It's about 40 acres, I think. That's kind of the obvious place where, the building would take place, but, with our regs, you can be more dense with the units based on, how much space you use, and how much space that you maybe don't use. And that's hopefully what they're gonna provide, by July for us.
One thing that sort of came to mind when looking at this was that, and wondering, since we're looking at trying to provide a system that'll support different housing options, does that mean creating essentially something equivalent to the Dorset water system?
Yes. One of the things that they identified was that they assumed it would be a PCWS, which is the highest classification.
Yeah,
So that could be owned a number of different ways, but it would be,
be a well and tanks in the ground. Essentially. And that, it does open up a, question about, having another utility about a mile down the road. They don't, the village system, it doesn't have capacity right now, but if they did, is that something that we should be looking at? That's a very complex question to ask because it could change the color and the timing of any of this stuff, like dramatically, because of the permitting and kind of environmental review that would be needed for.
but ultimately, if they went forward the way they have it now, That's the more conservative analysis. If we find out, great, we can tie into the town system already, then that would free up,
Where this could end up
that would free up
creating
land
a
for
lot of
other
opportunities
things.
to supplement the town system too. I mean, it could be,
Right.
Probably not.
no.
You're probably gonna size the well based on what the need is. It's,
It gets,
yeah. But we've having
And expensive.
dealing with the wells on Cheney, and they're now on the third iteration that is promising, and the planning loan actually just got approved. It's not a like slam dunk that it'll be, you'll get a well that'll overproduce. You may get something that'll just produce X, and that'll determine, what you can build essentially. Same thing with the wastewater side and the soils. Those are gonna be the two things that determine the number of units. That's why the discussion about connection to the village water system, there's nothing there, so now is the time to kind of at least look at that. I don't know that there's really any sense to study it in any depth, because I don't know that there's feasibility, at least right now. If there was, you could look at it, but you get to the village water system when they finish a yield study, tighten the system up, add the second well. There should be, in theory, maybe like triple the amount of water that's needed capacity wise, which would then create the opportunity for system expansion and more customers and stuff. And that's it's
But
there's
you
about
can do that
180
even without
connections.
getting over to this piece,
It's about a mile and a half down the road.
Mm.
So it'd be a mile and a half of new pipe. Maybe more than that.
I think you could expand the customers that are closer to town even.
Yes, and
Right.
to get to this location, you would be adjacent to two other non-transient public water systems in J.K. Adams and the Dorset RV Park. They both have their own water system kind of operational permits that they have to have. It's a lower class than the public water system, but they potentially would be, users. It could be cheaper for them long term to hook up to town water, and then they're not having to pay for an operator, they're not having to pay for a source protection plan and any kind of treatment, stuff like that. But as Frank well knows, that discussion about a mile and a half of new pipe.
That's a lot of pipe.
And you get into potentially Act 250 review, if the system expands by X percentage, which just kind of gets to, it gets complicated. So we're not at a point where I think we can, it makes sense to spend money to review that. But maybe, someday it might make sense. So yeah, it's a really long answer to a pretty simple question. But yeah, the way it's set up, it would be, on-site water, sewer, and that's what's gonna, that'll kind of be the guiding factor in how many units for the most part. Right, and I think Megan, you're gonna, before we go into that, you're gonna ask a question.
I totally forgot whatever it was I was going to ask. Very engrossed in the water. I don't know.
So it does include a couple of meetings. One to kick the project off, and then 35% design.
Could you explain what that is?
So the design is, they're going to be coming up with a conceptual layout,
Right.
which would, this is what it might look like, where it would go, the units, and conceptual is the word. It would just be something that,
Right.
the
And might they do,
the board and the housing committee
Yep.
could kind of, chew on and give feedback on. But that
do
was,
they usually do a couple of different scenarios, or is it just one kind of, educated from what we've seen, this is what we think
Because
makes
we have
sense?
so many lots.
It just would be
separate lots.
interesting to
yeah, I think
see
it's
if they
gonna be
could kind of
maybe,
come up with plan A and plan B.
yeah, no more than two, probably.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say. When we first were working with McClay, do you remember this, Henry? And they came up with the site plan of the property, and they had some things marked out, and I can't remember if it was, I think it was housing in like a little town.
Yeah, and it,
I'm just wondering, do we have a copy of that somewhere? Just, it was,
somewhere, but it wouldn't,
I mean, it wouldn't
no
address
engineer.
these issues, right?
Yeah, it wasn't an engineer that sluiced it out, so it was just kind of.
Right.
But yeah, we do have it somewhere. I could try to pass it around.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that would be useful for them to see or not. I'll be confident.
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
Because that was gonna be my question. We have so many lots there in different sections and different sizes, and we were talking about a mixture of different
Mhm.
things. So, you know,
Which-
to Liz's point, if they come out and say, okay, you should sustain this many townhouses or this many houses, you know, there could be a mix in there. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
yep, and I think, part of what, we're, a jumping off point from this would be if you want more detailed. Part of this is gonna set you up to know how many and potentially where. And then the next step would be, permitting, really.
Mhm.
Permitting and funding. Who the partners are. I think part of the discussion at the housing committee level was, the town potentially doing this back end work to get something, feasible, permitted, maybe some rudimentary kind of infrastructure work, and then whoever the partners are, here's the plan, and
That's our investment.
Go out and do
We have
it.
To do what we
Yeah,
want. and-
yeah, that's kind of at least thus far, been the idea. But this would get you well on your way to be ready to pursue permits and stuff like that. It wouldn't be a big jump to go from this to having stuff that, could be used for permits. And it would add a lot of color to a lot of these questions that the committee keeps kind of kicking around.
Mhm. So are you looking for,
Part of this is the discussion tonight is to review this and then to figure out how to pay for it. And what I'm proposing is to use ARPA money to fund it. It's $40,000. We don't, if it was like, 7 to 10,000, we probably could fund it out of our own, operating budget. But it is kind of a key investment. And it, seems like it's a pretty good use of the
I
money.
think it's a great use for.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep, I agree.
what it's intended for. Where would that leave us with
Yep.
leftover?
Good question, Frank. I've got it right here. So, that would leave us with 242 remaining.
And we have a deadline, we have to spend that, is that?
We have to
Deadline.
obligate it all by
Deadline
the
to
end of this year.
End of the year, yep.
And then we have to, in
Some
theory,
decisions.
spend it by 26.
Okay,
So
we
do
have
we
to-
need two motions there? One to sign the contract and the second to pay for the contract with
Sure.
ARPA funds?
Yeah.
I would just say that, I used to work here. I know Nicole really well. This is a great company. They'll do a great job for us.
great.
So moved.
Second,
And that's two motions I moved.
Okay, any other
Double
Double
discussion?
second.
second in the agreement and the ARPA money, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then all in favor, say aye.
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 And sign there, maybe.
The date today, the 19th?
19,
Okay.
319.
I'll fix it.
Right on schedule.
No, perfect.
35.
See that. Okay,
They would
old
putzed around
old
forever on
business
that.
slash new business.
Okay, the new town office, we do have, a nice update there. We got, bidding. Most of the bidding, you can see what they're calling 95% guaranteed maximum price estimate. It's obviously not 100, but it's pretty close. We did say that, the things that are outstanding, will not materially change the big number, maybe low hundreds or thousands. So the good news is the estimate, based, it's not really an estimate, it's a compilation of bidding. So each one of these packages was put out on the street to be bid by subcontractors. Naylor and Breen, uses basically their relationship with all the subcontractors to try to get interest and get pricing out of, multiple vendors. They were able to do that across almost all of the packages, which is really good. So it means that we got multiple prices on each thing. And they are, bottom line, it came in within like $40,000 of the estimate from about a year ago.
Which is actually.
Yeah, that's-
Which is good,
Considering
yeah, it's really good. So
prices.
the architect seems to be really happy with it. Right now, the architect is kind of chewing on it. We're supposed to have a meeting this week, with them and with me and me, so.
Hey, Rob,
Mhm.
I've got a question. I thought one of the reasons why we lowered the square footage initially was to make sure that we did not need a sprinkler system. They've got 42,000 out there. Now, is that just for fire doors or what is that?
It does need the rule, I don't know if they read the rule incorrectly the first time, or if the rules have changed, but it is required.
Okay,
Um,
so then it would, we obviously had to shrink it anyway, just for budget, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It wouldn't have mattered.
That was the,
It was 6,000 or-
Yeah, it was 6,000 and then there was a firewall.
Yeah.
Question about the meeting space, I think. Which would have changed the aesthetic potentially too. That was another reason to get under the.
Yep.
Under the 6,000.
Okay,
So hopefully soon we'll have a, a guaranteed maximum price contract, that we would
that'd be
be
great.
able to have the
Yeah.
board sign.
Excellent.
And then that would
Amazing.
start the process to, we are still awaiting the permits are applied for stormwater.
Great.
They've been kind of going back and forth, but it's, I think, finally into the review, so hopefully that'll be, in our hands within a month and a half, I think. And then the water wastewater stuff, was applied for a couple weeks ago, so that in theory, we should be on track for like an early summer groundbreaking.
Wow.
And
That's
if we
exciting.
actually used any of the bond proceeds today,
Nope.
so they got the 3.6 for this, so it covers.
Most of it, hopefully hopefully as much of it as possible.
We got-
There's soft costs that aren't included in this, that, in theory, some of that stuff has been, the engineering has come in a little bit under, which is good. The architectural stuff, is this kind of the same thing. Some components of it have been a little bit under, but there's still, there's, I think about 115,000 left in the contract with McClay. And that would be to manage the project through construction. And then on the
But the
engineering.
bond's
manager
got, bond's about 330 bigger than this estimate number, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there's still like the solar panels, paving of the parking lot. Things like EV chargers.
Solar was gonna be ARPA money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I should have when we get that, the actual GMP contract, one of the things that, McClay is gonna help with is coming up with a full kind of accounting of everything. Not just these costs, the hard costs, but the additional soft costs, which include everything like, the new furniture,
Mhm.
the network setup, the meeting,
Right.
technology
AV stuff,
stuff. Yeah, all that's gonna be kind of included. And it should become pretty close to that 3.7, 3.8, somewhere in there.
Just curious, who do we use for networking and stuff like that? The North Shore?
For right now,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of needs, so yeah, it's very limited, but yeah. When we get the new setup, it's gonna have to be kind of spoken for, so that is a complication. But good news nonetheless, so.
Yep.
Better than
So,
having it come
Right
in
now, we're not paving.
way too high. Right now, we're not paving.
Okay, And all these things on the conceptual, those are just ideas that we could
We
do
could drop, but
if we wanted to.
not, yeah,
Those aren't included on
they're
that
not
page one.
included, correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And there's some that have some substance, some that don't,
Right.
some that have substance, but maybe there's good reasons to not do it.
Mhm.
So I think but it's good to have that list, because it is a pretty good, collectively, if you were to add all that stuff up, it is,
Right.
you know, probably many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars you could try to carve out if you really had to.
Mhm.
Stuff like the roof
Mhm.
material, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yep.
Maybe you said this already, but where's the wastewater?
That's gonna be in the general
There.
conditions.
General conditions, okay.
For site work.
Yeah.
Site work, right.
There's a big site work number,
Yep.
303 or
Right.
something like that.
Well, wastewater, stormwater.
Because that's gotta be a mound, I gotta believe.
Mountain system behind the building, and then there's, a decent amount of stormwater work that's gotta go on. And that's kind of that's one of the bigger price drivers probably in that whole piece.
Rob, when we had first looked at this as a group a while back, there had been some discussions about who was gonna do the landscaping. And I would just like to again suggest that if that hasn't already been spoken to, that we make sure that some local people could make bids for it. Remember, we had talked at the time that it would just be nice to see if we could find someone more locally to be able to do some of that. I don't know if that train has left the station, but
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
in theory, Naylor and Breen has put this out to,
Mhm.
to everybody that they were able
Gotcha.
to have relationships with on that front. I know a handful of them definitely are local.
Good.
Whether or not they actually bid on it, I don't know, but.
Right,
I know on a few fronts that, that locals confirmed receipt, but they weren't bidding because they're too busy.
Great.
But
Thanks.
definitely, I think they did a pretty good job.
Mhm.
And that, the being so close to the other estimate is a pretty good indication. And then earlier, the contingency figure is about 4%, which is, I think, kind of low, but I think we've got a really good, competitive pricing snapshot right now, so they feel pretty good about it.
Rob, when they're talking about, as an option here, installing wood ceilings and acoustic batting on ceilings, and then they list these particular room numbers. Not looking at the diagram, I couldn't tell you what they were. What rooms were they talking about?
The meeting space.
Just in the meeting space, okay,
Yeah.
because they list all these different things. That's what that meant.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kind of I think, sound deadening stuff in the meeting space, which
right,
we can always do after. we
right,
find the meeting.
exactly, okay. Okay, great.
Reed Farm Lane, there's an update to this. We actually just got, word from the state that FEMA is telling them that they should have it approved by, the end of March. And approved means the updated grant agreement.
With the final numbers.
Yes.
There.
I'm just gonna go back because I missed the chat in the town office thing. I think is the EV charging in question for level 2 or DC fast charging. The answer to that is hopefully both. Hopefully we're gonna have level 3 and level 2 chargers. And we're kind of waiting. We're still a ways away from the, implementing that. So we're kind of doing some review of costs and vendors and stuff like that. There's, I think, vendors where you can host them and, maybe they shoulder some of the upfront infrastructure costs. And then there's other options. I don't really know enough to even speak intelligently about it right now, but we'll have some options for sure. And again, being both level 2 and the level 3 chargers, which is the fast charger, there's not a ton of those around. There's a few in Manchester, but that's about it. Okay, so now Reed Farm Lane. So hopefully FEMA. So the timeline. So FEMA would approve by the end of March. That would give us the ability the lawyers essentially are like ready slash getting ready. To, put the property to sale and closing and all that, and then. Oh, by the way, the state tells us that in theory, 90 days after we close, the building's gotta be demolished within 90 days of closing. That's part of the grant agreement. So hopefully we can bring that to fruition. I don't see a reason why not, but, just something to be aware of. So in theory, I think it looks like the grant adjustment end of March, and then probably the closing sometime end of May, and then 90 days from then, the remediation work would have to be done.
And that's at our cost.
That's covered by the grant.
But we would be doing the work.
Nope, we would be subcontracting the work. So we've talked to, Deconstruction Work, Eric at Deconstruction Works, which is the company that takes stuff apart and tries to sell
Reuses it,
stuff, and you get some proceeds. It's generally, even with the net sale revenue, it's more expensive to do that, but we are gonna look at doing it just because it's a little more responsible way to do it. But I don't know we don't know what his schedule is right now, so we've got a deadline to comply with.
Is there a deadline for the owners, the Bowmans, to make a decision?
It's a good question. I think that they generally have a little bit of time to decide as to whether or not they want to move forward. There's going to be probably, from when FEMA approves the grant agreement, I would think it's going to be about a month or so, month or two.
Okay.
So it'll happen pretty fast once it gets going.
Yeah, and we've known about the number comes from an appraisal that was done, so they've known about that for a long time. The state is committed to try to make them whole to that number, but plus potentially, a portion of the business value as well. So that's where when the state sends us both the grant agreement from FEMA and then their grant agreement, we'll have the numbers then, and that's really when they're going to have probably a couple weeks to kind of make their decision. It's not. You'd like to have more time, but it's been 4 years.
Yeah.
The initial grant agreement is from 4 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, we've just been fortunate that it's been able to be kind of open-ended.
Yep.
And we didn't decommit the money, or decommit the grant agreement. Potentially that's, and one other thing, that was kind of solved in this whole process is they've, they have, done a boundary line adjustment with the land that they own to the west. And which will give the town the ownership of that whole lower kind of parcel that connects to Brookside. So that, if you recall, the second part of this is to potentially apply for a grant with the state to move the road to Brookside. And that would allow us to do that without any permission from anybody else. There would be some complexities around the properties on Brookside and right-of-way verbiage changing and deeds and stuff like that, but that's all those folks would have to kind of sign off on it anyway. So, and then the Bowmans have built a house up above, so there's a place
Already.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, there's a place to go. So I think that timing seems like it's pretty good.
Okay, good.
It's been a long road for sure.
Very long road.
Route 30, Route 7 speeding stuff, no change there really. We're gonna do a speed study in East Dorset again. The tennis wave problem has been solved thanks to Herman Construction,
Hooray.
and it was basically a day's work and it cost about $5,000.
That's excellent.
Take that
So-
papers.
Yeah, it's, I think, a good example of finding a problem and fixing it.
Yeah,
But the town
absolutely.
being really the only entity that had the capacity to do it.
I think we need to
Well, that's great.
And then, let's see,
Just apply.
new business. The Route 30 path, at the last meeting, we had the presentation of the path study. And then, it's a lot to digest. One of the things we've tried to do here to kind of have a follow-up discussion or get some direction is to come up with, the study's finalized. It is a really good document. I think it'll be a good document for a long time. Right now or 5 years from now or 10 years, whatever it is, it'll be a good document for a long time. Two options as far as we can kind of tell moving forward. Neither of which are easy, but that doesn't mean that it could slow us down. The state grant option, which is through the program that we got the grant for the study. They have a construction grant program. It's got an 80-20 match. The issue is that the grants funds are limited to around 3 million for the whole program for the year. Some cons, the state process is kind of long and it's expensive. And I've actually heard from engineers that will not even do projects in this program because they feel that it's a waste of time and money. But that's not, but it still potentially could pay 80% of the project cost up to, there is no maximum other than, you've got a really large price tag on the total work scope and, the state's only got $3 million a year to give out.
Right.
The largest grant they've ever given out of the program, I think, is about $1 million, which is about a third of the whole funding for the year. Other funding option, local funding, town funds, fundraising, other grants outside the state program.
Sorry, Rob, that
Yeah.
3 million is statewide, not project.
Statewide,
Oh, okay.
so.
Yeah.
If we,
Aha.
logically, if we said, we want to do this, and we go in and apply for $8 million, when there's only 3 available.
Right.
We're probably not gonna get the grant.
And we could maybe just do the strip in front of HN Williams.
Right?
200
So,
feet.
part of this is coming up with
Exactly.
a couple of like
More stuff.
maybe lower tier options, getting some feedback from, BCRC and other folks as to those options. So, what we kind of did here is we picked HN Williams to Raptor Lane. It's about 1.2 miles. If you use all of the study metrics from Du Bois and King, the construction, and actually construction, everything, all in cost of that 1.2 miles, according to them, would be about 4.8 million. Under the 80-20, that the state share would be 3.8. We've established that they don't have that much funding. So it obviously would be less than that, but that would be the share. There's a note there, more likely scenario, maybe you apply for $1 million or $1.5 million, and then the town share becomes, the larger portion. And then I've got a note here, we should seek guidance from BCRC and VTrans on, how best to move forward if that's what you want to do. One of the confounding things is that, in order to apply for the grant, you got to have a start and an end to the project work area. And the most logical start and end to that first section is the 2 spots that we've kind of picked out. I guess you could go to the quarry instead maybe and limit it, but I just, to me, that's the most logical stretch. Option 2 under local funding with that stretch. But given some of the requirements of the state program, this is where the feedback from some of the consultants and VCRC could be helpful. There's a lot of information out there about these projects being 30 and 40% more expensive to construct.
With state grant.
Yeah, because you're doing it through their grant funding process versus, another scenario would be, all right, you've got this 1.2 miles that you like, talk to BCRC, talk to a consulting engineer, what would it cost to design it? That's kind of the first step. It's kind of like where the town office thing started. Like you just design it. Okay, they're going to design it, and then they're going to give you a sense of what they think the cost estimate would be. And that's kind of a little bit of a different road. You wouldn't necessarily know what you could design and then they could come up with an estimate and then you could bid the thing. And then you would have real pricing versus this kind of, the paper pricing, which can be drastically different. Worst case, you've designed it and you put it out to bid and it's way too expensive. You just don't do it. Best case, you design it, you put it out to bid and it's cheaper than kind of what you thought it would be under the program. And then you kind of at that point have a better benchmark for the price. And then you'd go back to the funding discussion about, what is the town gonna do about it? And those are really, that's about all I could contrive. You can't, you certainly can't come forward and find, there's no grant option for the 8.3 million. There's no, maybe there's a find a champion, do some fundraising.
It's just,
See how
it's a
far you
very,
get.
very big number.
It's a big
Yes.
number, yeah.
Huge number.
Got a housing thing.
So, but I think it is, the first section, the 1.2 miles, most of that is it's the most feasible contiguous off the road path section. That my own belief is that if you were to figure out how to pull it off, I think it could be a huge amenity for that part of town, and the connection to the town forest and the bike trails and all that other stuff. I think there could be some really great, synergies there. There's a lot of reasons to try to do it. It's just a matter of how.
Money. Northern Border Regional
How do you-
Commission,
Potentially, yeah.
USDA,
Yep.
Rural
That
Development.
gets
We
into
can
the
get
other,
Sarah Waring down here.
the other grant, the other grant funding
That's
option.
the number, that's the volume that we want to look at.
Yep.
But I bet Sarah Waring would love to weigh in on this. She's the state director of the USDA for Vermont and New Hampshire,
Mhm.
and it's
And
probably
I
too,
think earmark is
too
another
late
thing.
for, there's also the earmarks. That would probably take a little bit more legwork first.
Well, it is a
But-
fabulous project if somebody else pays for it. Yes, it's,
Well, but it's
They all are.
connectivity, it's outdoor recreation, it's
Checks all
Vorak,
boxes.
it's connecting neighborhoods, the Rupert up to it's.
Yep, we can definitely work on getting input from BCRC. I can pursue looking at those grants and get a better sense of the numbers that they can bring to bear. And then, you all can chew on this stuff. One of the things that I thought, that if you could get a reasonable cost estimate on design, that could be another potentially nice use of ARPA funding, because it would get you some, we know, okay, now we've got this thing designed, we've got a pretty good, a good idea of cost, because it's not conceptual, it's designed. And there may be, nuances within there that you can change some of the, the construction scope and spec, and you can manipulate maybe what the costs are a little bit, and maybe come in a little bit less than $4.8 million for 1.2 miles.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed that
Yeah.
the hope was a long time ago, not that long ago, pre-COVID, the thought was like, it's $1 million a mile. Roughly to do this type of stuff, $1.5 million. So to see it go from that to this is just, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And there may be other, if you were to get into design, maybe there's other ways to find efficiencies and find it, ways to do it more cheaply. And still get the benefit. That's the other thing. So.
This was all proposed within our right of way.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea, on the Route 30 portion is that it would be done within the right of way of 30, so that no, additional legal easements would be needed.
Good.
the only spot where they potentially would be needed would be the Squires Kelleher connection where, the design that they came up with would go outside of the 50 foot. Right away, they did like a zigzag.
Would this also not seem like it also got kind of expensive when you moved the center line of the road?
Yes,
Right.
that's a
This
large,
is-
and
This is not doing much of that.
It's doing some. It's doing some. There's some portion of this section where that was contemplated, and that's why you get into the expense. And that's, again, why, you know, if you were to get another firm involved, do some design, get them out there to do the survey work,
Mhm.
to really dig into like, okay, here's this 1,000 foot section. How could we do this? How could we, you know, potentially fight with V-Trans a little bit about their spec and their permit requirements. One of the things that bugs me about V-Trans is they're supposed to, you know, be implementing these programs and they don't, you know, one, it's not their fault, they don't have the funding, but two, they keep a you know, a road spec on Route 30, like they want to treat it like it's like Route 7 or like a,
Mhm.
you know, a NASCAR.
So if you
Speedway.
looked at this and you ended up saying that, you know, okay, if some places you made the buffer a little bit smaller or
If
whatever.
the state would
then you could-
relent on their 14 foot clear, so on each section, each side of the road, they want it to be 14 feet clear of anything and everything, because the plow may hit it. That's
Which
it.
of course it isn't now and
No,
existing.
In a lot of places, no, you've got utility poles that are closer and stuff like that. So if they would
Be flexible.
be flexible, then that's where I get into, like, if you were to do this yourself, you know, get a firm to try to go back and forth with V-Trans and get some flexibility built in, you could probably, you'd be looking at it, the spec would be totally different. You wouldn't be moving the road. You know, you may be cutting lanes, you may be, you know, doing things a little bit differently if they would be flexible. They, you know, but they're kind of the key, they're the reason that it costs 4.8 million, basically. To
Because we have so
to kind
much
of sum
money.
it, to kind of sum it all up, you know, they have this program and then their own,
spend it
their own regulation, their own kind of spec is the reason that it is so prohibitive. And that's why it doesn't really happen.
So who would you?
And I think they'd be better off to just have their own program and do stuff on their own roads, of their own volition. That would be much easier. Sorry, Megan, go ahead.
Who would you, is it, so are you thinking that you would like to put out an RFP, put that together? Who would you go to for this, for the second phase? I mean, I thought, is Dubois and King not the ones?
No, they could be. Yep, it could be.
Have they ever done anything, any other ones like this?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know the list of the ones that they were involved with, but I know they were involved with a couple of,
It's not their first rodeo.
no.
Okay.
No. And there are other firms that have done it too.
Just be like an MSK type. deal too.
I think MSK did some of the stuff in Bennington. The path that goes from Kosher Drive to the middle school, I think that they did that. You know, it's not that's partial, it's not, that's mostly on Town Road, which is a little different. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the type of, the only real feasible option I can see to keep this thing kind of moving forward. You know, short of the state having some input around the grant program, you know, the program, you know, if they think we should scope the size of this a little bit differently, and if they thought it would be a good candidate, and if you get it to a number that it would be, you know, reviewed fairly, or reviewed, you know, appropriately.
Sounds like, you know, the bottom line is, if we get state money, then it'll still cost, our portion will be bigger than if we just did the project ourselves.
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. And that's the trickiness around going through the program.
Right.
You know, but we did, you know, you did get the grant for the scoping study. And it paid for most of it. So most of, you know, what was in that presentation last week, all but like $6,000 or $7,000, state paid for. So we don't have a lot into it, yet.
It's just such a large number. It's hard to contemplate spending
Well,
more
and
money
that's why
down
I
that path.
think if we
because-
have Mark, who's the transportation planner from BCRC,
Hmm.
and then maybe an engineer that he thought would be good, and just meet with them and just kind of get their input onto these two options.
Yeah.
And just see if they even think anything's, feasible.
So I think it's really nice that we have, even though there's they look like in the end like they're pie in the sky. It's still nice to have, here's something we could do someday, just to have that,
Mhm.
in our
Absolutely.
pocket. And
And there's other shades of, gray with like, you could change the spec, you could do bike lanes, you could do, sidewalks, there are other things you could do.
Mhm.
That wouldn't be this, but could improve this situation.
Would be similar, but would be, but.
Yeah,
cheaper.
they wouldn't be as nice and as
Yeah.
glamorous as kind of what this is with the amenity piece to it, but it could be that, I think for instance, the HN to the village, to the post office, like it's, having kind of sleuthed that out and there's water stuff going, but even then, it's more likely like that's, sidewalk and a bike lane are probably more appropriate in there just
Yeah.
because of the, everything that goes on.
Also, traffic slower there and.
Mhm.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just a lot. It's gonna be super expensive to work in that
It's
area.
narrow.
Yeah, so, yep. I will follow up on the grant options and see if I can, maybe have a follow-up on this at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And there is if you want to do liquor licenses under new business, you can do that now, or you can.
We also have this resolution appointing the
James resolution.
Bob and ours.
Oh, yes, sorry.
CUD.
Yep. Let me gotta do that first.
I think I'll recuse myself.
Then I'll move that we appoint
You
Bob
have
Nazaris as
243
alternative,
Hill Road.
alternate delegate to the Southern Vermont CUD.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I abstain. Yeah, sure. Suck it in there. Nobody else can do finance stuff ever.
Well, Did you overlook this on purpose?
There's no real update.
Okay,
So,
I was thinking maybe an email to the neighbors. Let them know in case they're.
I mean, we already did the test beds and stuff, but yeah, you're thinking with like negotiating?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because those neighbors are still very interested in the property.
Well, who knows? They were very interested a year ago. And
I
I
think there's still interest there.
and I sat down with one and he's expressed interest, so. But at that point, we didn't know really about value or anything, so.
Okay,
Philosophical.
So I think just, hey, just want you to say this, a status report, this is where we're at and we're proceeding.
okay, that's good fun.
I mean, it's not gonna become a park, I don't think.
No, although I did hear someone is trying to put some sort of a bike trail down along the river there.
Oh.
Have you heard about that?
Yes.
Anyway, yeah,
But
that's
that's,
a good idea. Oh, so what did you just want us to do?
The
Liquor
next new
thing?
business would be liquor licenses, if
Okay.
you wanna do
Um,
it.
no, we can vote right now. So can I have a
I
motion
move
to
that we
recess?
become, that we recess and become the liquor
Liquor
board,
Control.
I will second.
liquor control authority.
Um, And did I hear second?
Frank.
Frank, all in favor, say yes, and we're now the Liquor Control Authority. And we are going to approve liquor licenses for the Dorset Inn, first class, Dorset Bakery, first class, Barrows House, first class, Dorset Field Club, first class, Dorset Union Store, first class and second class, House Gas General Store, second class, Jiffy Mart, second class. And we already did Williams, so that's it. So, the motion, do we do a motion?
Yep.
Is that what we're gonna do? Okay. a
So I
motion
move that
to
we approve liquor licenses for the
Aforementioned,
aforementioned list.
Second?
all in favor, say aye.
I,
Oh, and, we'll now leave recess and enter back into regular
Our
meeting
regular-
as a slide. Our
A regular program.
I feel like we should stand up and spin around. or something.
Okay, so finance,
For delinquent taxes, pretty similar to last month. Still ahead of last year, which is good. Taxes were just collected last week. A lot of taxes paid online. Which is good. Easier for everybody. And I would say they're paid at a pretty normal rate. As far as fiscal year 24, we're about 73% of the way through the year. And we're kind of tracking right on budget. Expenses last month, pretty late. And they do include the cost of fixing the river at Tennisway,
Yeah.
which is under the storm emergencies line, and that's where we actually did add for fiscal 25. We added some more money for that exact scenario.
Okay.
And then fund balance is all there. The ARPA would now be 242 not obligated.
Yep.
That's it.
I move we accept the finance report as presented.
Second,
all in favor, say aye.
I,
I,
We plowed this morning. Nobody wanted to, but they had to. When they plowed it and the snow melted 5 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, they had to plow. You don't plow, the cars drive on it, can't start. Other things, getting ready for paving bids, doing truck purchasing, onto the other stuff. Fire district is plugging along. I mentioned earlier, they did get word today, or yesterday actually, that the planning loan for the new well got approved, which is great. Took 2 years to get it approved, but it's approved, so.
and it's just a loan.
And it's a loan, but half of it, potentially all of it would get forgiven.
Oh.
That's why we've been waiting 2 years, because it's,
Yeah.
there's the potential to save $175,000. So that's good. So that tracks along kind of nicely. There's also, a really good chance that they're gonna do additional work probably on Church Street, with some mainline, work. Which is good. They've got a,
West Road end.
no, it would be the, it would likely be, from the West Road to the Green, or all the way to the almost to the 30 intersection.
Oh,
That would be great.
the whole thing.
Most of it. And they're actually gonna move it into the, south side of the right of way, so that it would get out of the road. It crosses the road at a really kind of long, weird angle, goes underneath the Green.
Okay.
It would actually get into the, the homeowners that are gonna view it as their front yard, but it's in the right of way of the road.
Is there any issue with traversing that part of the road next to Prentice Pond that we've determined is at risk?
It has to be, it's just a different spec on the way it's built. It has to be sleeved.
Okay, so it's
They can do that
disturbing.
without hurting the.
There is the potential that, you know, that there would be follow-up work related to the dam done at a different time. Which, but that wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't really impact their ability to do it now.
Okay.
They'll have to, the spec is that they're gonna have to sleeve it. And that's normally what they would do anyway.
And it's not going underneath the marble sidewalks, right?
No,
It's gonna be
no,
between
between the
the.
curb, between the edge of the road and the sidewalk, essentially that kind of turf area.
Yep.
For the most part. And they've got good pricing on it, so they were fortunate that the vendor that is doing the project now. Put pricing on it, and seems like right now they're, you know, hopefully get them under contract to do it, because the pricing is like. It's very good, yeah, compared to some of the stuff that's out there right now, it's, you know, like 60%.
Wow.
Of some of the per foot cost of mains. Elsewhere, so that's good. So they're gonna, when they do that, they're gonna be able to just kind of take advantage of the being under budget and also to maximize some grants that they got. But it also means that there's definitely a whole nother summer of work and maybe even some spring of 25 work. Let's see, well, it's, housing group meets tomorrow. It's been really good. I think that you're gonna get some, kind of good tangible information, as this moves along, which is great. The Conservation Commission is having a landowner outreach meeting on April 4th, and it's related to land conservation in Dorset and folks that own kind of large tracts of land. And there's the posters in the back here. Everything else is, we pretty much talked about. That's all I have.
We have a date for when Rachel is going to present to us.
Oh, no, she's presenting at
Oh, generally.
yes, at a trail symposium, which
Okay.
is at a statewide entity,
Oh, okay.
which is kind of neat because it's not, you know, not everybody gets to do that.
Nice.
And they kind of sought her out. to do it.
Is it one of the goals of this work to kind of rebuild or the old trail from, you know, 1920s at the club, the Dorset hiking club?
Dorset Science Club.
Yeah, Science Club had all the way, you know, over at Dorset Mountain and then Jackson Peak and then down at Peters Point.
Like a goal would be a good word, yes. It's not, you know, you gotta, in order to do that stuff, you gotta have site control or agreements in place, but yeah, I mean, it's. You know, part of it is, you know, the route to Owl's Head has been, you know, kind of, codified and fixed
Yeah.
up and repaired,
Yeah.
and now it's sustainable and, you know, if and when there's opportunity to, you know, extend it beyond that to, you know, around the circumference of the hollow or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we would be interested in, but, you know,
Okay, so that's
site,
not,
site control is needed. That's a little bit where the, you know, the landowner conservation kind of discussion comes in, because that's part of those things kind of go hand in hand. You know, that kind of, low volume, low impact, outdoor rec and land conservation are typically kind of hand in hand. So, yeah, potentially it's a goal.
Any other?
We have to move, I'm not gonna be here April 16th.
That's vacation week.
It is vacation. Or which would be
The 9th
the
The 9th?
or the 23rd.
Week after would be the 23rd.
I can do either.
Either's fine with me.
me too. as long as I don't get delayed on the day before.
Where are you gonna?
Ninth or
Let's do the ninth.
Portland, Oregon.
Oh. What did you say, Jim?
just, yeah, the Tuesday, the 30th is the one after that.
No,
The
we're
9th
looking
or
at
the
9th or the
23rd?
23rd, either works,
23rd?
Either
to the
either
ninth.
one works for me. too.
Okay, and Liz, did you say either?
either works, I would prefer the 9th,
Okay,
I think.
well, then let's go for the 9th.
Yeah, it's good.
The day after the eclipse.
After the Total eclipse, exactly.
Nice.
Glasses.
Okay, cool. Any new business? Then can I have a meeting to adjourn? I
So,
mean, a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Nice.
Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Ooh,
Rob.
Look at that.
Thank you. Good meeting.
20.
20.
Oh, well done, Shepard.
Well